Jock Barnes and Trent McArdle both grew up in South-east Queensland and met through sport. But one afternoon, a decade ago, they jammed together, and as Route 33, they have been playing together ever since. They've released 2 albums, The Switch in 2017 and Coro Drive in 2019. They now have a new single, Summer You, and we're going to talk about it. Hello, Trent, and hello, Jock.
How you going? How are you?
How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm going to start by asking, which sport brought you together?
It was actually through my brother.
It's through his brother. So his brother was a professional rugby union player, and him and I are the same age. So we met at a swimming carnival, state titles, and about 3 months later, a rugby league trials, and it just kind of built from there. And Jock was 2 years younger than us. So
I was a smart ass younger brother.
That's
it. Just be a little stirrer. And then through the sport, my brother's like, oh, you should go have a jam one time. And Trent playing keys and myself playing guitar, went across there and we had a crack. And then I threw us in the deep end with a local gig down, and we would have sounded absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, we would have been so bad. Yeah. I didn't know he'd done it, and he said, oh, we're doing a gig next weekend. We hadn't prepared anything. So anyway, rest is history.
Yes.
Well, it is. So yes, you obviously did have to be playing an instrument in order to jam together. So Trent, when did you start playing keys?
It was all around the sport thing again. Mum and Dad said you can't just play footy and swim and all of that stuff. You need to do something that uses your mind. And so they threw up some public speaking or music or whatever. And it just happens they knew a piano teacher. So
that was music.
I wouldn't I? So I was about 10 years old. Mum and Dad forced me into doing something. I said, I suppose I'll go learn the piano. So that was how I started.
So public speaking was the alternative, and you're like,
yeah, and I said hell no to that. So here we are.
Yeah. And Jock, for you, guitar, when did that start?
Yeah, out of Kingaroy, just got some lessons out there when I was younger, and then moved up to Brizzy and sort of, I don't know, used to just jam on the train with kids at school and stuff. And then, you can tell from I just sit to my 4 chords in my rhythm section. That's about it for me.
Yeah. But I do think there is a correlation between the training you do in sport and music, because it's that same expectation that it's not always going to be fun. You're not always getting to play the game or compete if it's swimming. Actually, you've got to practice. And the same with music. You've got to practice, and then you get to perform. So I wonder if you found that actually that sport has helped you as musicians.
Oh, definitely, from a discipline point of view and everything. And the same with anything sport, like the harder you train and you work, as you're saying, put into it, I guess the results pay for themselves, and you can actually see that correlation there. And I guess the same goes in music. You're sitting there, going away at scales and doing all the sort of basic stuff. And then when you actually get into using those skill sets, I suppose, then you can actually see that the benefits. Same with sport, doing drills, and you actually get to see it in action when you're playing on the weekend. So I definitely can see that correlation.
And also the whole, not every time you train to win something do you win it. Mm-hmm. Same thing with music releases, right? Yeah, you can put everything you want into a release and you think it ticks all the boxes or whatever, and the ones that you don't think will go well do, and the ones that you think will go all right don't. So I suppose we've been accustomed to being let down earlier in life, so it's
got some humble pie in the oven.
Yeah, that's it. So it was easier if signals don't go well now. We can cop it on the chin.
You got some humble pie in the oven. I have never heard that expression before.
I just made it up.
You can use it again if you want.
So I suppose I also need to ask, are you still involved in sport, or is music your new sport?
It's hard, obviously, juggling life and everything at the moment. Sport got a bit of a back burner. Music took the forefront just for the weekends and that sort of stuff. And
we got too old and injured.
Yeah.
It's probably the real reason. It wasn't that we wanted to get out of it. We were forced out of it.
Yeah, hobbling around. I'd hats off to these old guys that still have run like late 30s, 40s and stuff in the footy and different things.
Yeah, country footy, you see it a lot.
Absolutely mad.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess it's hard to let go of the team environment. I think, and that's possibly where being in a band can make up for it. Especially because you both played team sports. If you were a solo artist, you might be a little lonely because you obviously tend to be in a team.
No, it's true. Obviously, having that band camaraderie when you go on for road trips out west and that kind of stuff, and having that banter and that kind of vibe, I suppose, definitely replaces that footy team kind of vibe and that sort of stuff. And I suppose we can get that sort of,
when everything clicks as well on stage, it's the same feeling as things going well on a football field.
Yeah, great.
Really.
So that very first gig where Jock threw you both in the deep end, or he threw himself in the deep end, Trent really threw you in the deep end because he agreed to it. So when you said you didn't know what to play, you didn't have anything to play, what did you come up with?
just 90s bangers.
We just did covers, and we didn't know if they'd work or not. We actually both didn't sing then, so how we started singing is a different story. But we both didn't actually sing at all. We had another singer, and didn't have foldbacks, which for people who don't know, it's how you hear yourself. We just put speakers out the front, and who knows what came out.
Yeah, it was rough. It was real rough.
But the crowd was all our friends anyway, and our family, so our mum and dads had to clap. They had no choice.
Yeah, you can actually know them by name when they're walking out of the room.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Where are you going?
Yeah, no foldback's a bit rough. So how did you become singers then?
Do you want to tell that
one? Well, we had. I'll leave some of the details out, but we had two different singers that we used. I was obviously on keys, Jock was on guitar, and they didn't mind a drink or two. It's probably the best way to put it. One of them was held up by the mic stand, so he basically fell off stage and then the pub owner said, "Get out." And then we basically had a game of chicken on. I'll always remember the song was Wonderwall. We had a game of chicken on Wonderwall, and who was going to sing? And I ended up singing. So that's how I started singing first, and obviously Jock caught on straight after. So that's how we started singing.
Yeah, right. And once you started singing, do you think, oh yeah, this is pretty good. I can keep doing this?
Oh, again, I think it was having naive to how good we sounded at the time. It was maybe probably having a bit of Dutch courage every time we sung as well helped. But yeah, I guess listening back now, I think we would have sounded horrendous.
Yeah.
No lessons, nothing, just having a crack. But I'm glad we did, and singing's obviously all part of it. We've learned to, obviously, as we've done recording and gone to the studios and different things along the way, we've definitely learned to sharpen our singing and become better at it, I suppose.
Yeah, and you're still doing it, so obviously it's working all these years later.
People still listen.
I'd argue it's the hardest job on stage.
Singing. Oh, for sure.
I did a gig the other night up in Moranbah with Brooke Schubert, and I just played keys with her, and I'd forgotten how much easier it was not being a singer. I was like,
trying to remember words. That's what
we're just sitting there doing nothing. It's the best.
So you're on the phone to Brooke saying, "Hey, Brooke, do you need a permanent keyboard?"
Yeah, exactly. I'm out of Route 33. I was playing piano for you now.
Okay. So as you started to form the sound for Route 33, what artists were you listening to who might have influenced the sound?
Oh, I grew up obviously at Kinroy, a lot of influence from the folks, being sort of country music and that kind of stuff. Definitely a sort of Aussie country music, as well as sort of Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson and the American style as well. And then obviously going to school up here was more sort of 90s rock as well. There's definitely an influence, and obviously probably more so yourself, mate.
Yeah, it's that Matchbox 20, Eagle Eye Cherry, that whole early 90s rock where, we were kind of primary school to high school then, and so I think it's probably more for those two. Having said that, you're picking stuff off every day these days with the way Spotify works and all of that. In the morning you might be listening to folk, in the middle of the day you might be listening to hip hop, afternoon you listen to country, and at night you're listening to
pretty eclectic mix.
That's it, and I think that's what's making music probably better products and mixed genres a lot better than it was probably 20 years ago, because people seem to stay in their lane more, I feel.
Yeah. Yep.
And where is Route 33? Because you obviously named the band after something.
It's Coronation Drive, actually. So from Brisbane all the way out to sort of Ippy, where we had our first gig out there. And that was also The Switch, being Ipswich, was the name of our first album as well. But it's actually, not many people, even people who live here in Brisbane, don't know. It's actually, because obviously we don't go by sort of the routes and stuff around here. It's the highway names, but it is Route 33, and it goes from Brisbane. And we both actually grew up. When I moved back up to Brizzy, came down from the sunny coast, who lived just off it as well. So
we both now live off it. So Route 33, we probably live 500 metres each side of Route 33 from each other.
Yeah.
Well, that's worked out beautifully. At which point in the band's history or life did you name it Route 33?
Right at the start, because basically we were working with Tom Inglis at the time, and he said, you got to come up with a band name, because we had a cover band name, which was Golden Child, which is a whole joke around our siblings were better sportsmen than us, so our parents loved them more. But they said we couldn't run with that name, so we had to come up with something. And my partner was driving home from work and looked up at the sign on Coronation Drive, which is the main road out of Brisbane, basically, and said, "Oh, that's Route 33," and that's kind of how it started. So it's a bit of the Americanized kind of name on it, obviously, because it's not how Australians use the term, but obviously the songs we're writing and putting out in the world are the Australian-American crossover type thing. So we thought it was fitting that way, but still had that Brisbane element, kind of like how Powderfinger did back in the day.
Yeah, right. I do think Golden Child is a great name for a band, and I have a brother, and I'm known to refer to him as the Golden Child. So I think anyone with a sibling,
yeah, we had some fans at the start because of that reason. I think they got on that.
People started relating to us. They're like, "Oh, I'm one of them." So
yeah, it wasn't. It's better than Black Sheep's. It's a little bit
dark,
emo rock. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start writing songs? And when you started writing, were you writing together?
It was actually, we went for our first trip over to Nashville. And we're sitting in Nissan Stadium over there watching, obviously, the CMA Fest, and it was unreal. And we said, let's have a crack at this at writing. We got back and we penned it pretty much straight away. We started getting.
But we wrote our first song together.
Life was his.
No, but yeah, we probably wrote our first one. Some of You was both of us somewhat.
Yeah.
And there's another one coming out called Blue Collar Man. But the first two albums, they were individual writes. So what we generally do, one of us will go away, come up with a concept, probably have it, call it 90% finished.
Yeah.
Other one will come in and go, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? So I know country's such a big co-writing type community, and we've done the songwriting stuff with Gav Carfoot and those guys where they came up with same songs for Kaylee Bell and James Johnson and stuff, but it's never really been something we've done. So we're trying to hone that skill a bit and get better at that.
That's so interesting that you're only now starting to write together, because obviously individual writing did work very well for you, 2 albums produced. So was it just more a case of thinking, we need to apply ourselves. We want to do it and we need to apply ourselves to do it?
I think I struggle to see how people can sit in a room and go, okay, let's write. To me, it's, well, we both have full-time jobs that take a lot of our time. But at the time that I feel like writing something or a concept comes to me, he's not on hand and vice versa. And I think it was a matter of that. I really struggle to see how people sit in rooms. They must go in there surely and do 5 days when nothing good comes out, but on the 6th day it does. I don't know. Maybe it's wrong and it just the creative juices flow, but I just feel like it's an individual thing. You're in a moment, you come up with a concept and you'll do something in 15 or 20 minutes. That's how I've always found we've kind of worked, and then bounce it off the other person once it's mostly finished.
Because it is a different relationship to each other, I would imagine, than the one you're used to, the performance relationship, the rehearsal space and everything. Writing songs, it's a different part of your brain. It's a different muscle almost to use.
No, definitely. Obviously, it can be an emotional song or something like that. And sometimes you want to, and it's a vulnerability thing as well. You can sit there and write different things and try different things without, just in your own sort of world and own sort of bubble, writing on your own. And then you can bring it to the table when you've got the foundation there, I suppose, to build off from. So, I suppose it's a skill set we need to learn to do more collab stuff with different people. And
I'm excited to do it with different genres. That's what excites
well.
me more. A lot of country writers write together. But, we got access to a few of the pop guys around Australia and R&B, and I think they can bring elements, even chord progressions that we don't have. And that's what you see Chris Stapleton doing, writing with Ed Sheeran's, and those obviously way up next caliber. But they're going to call Ed. I was going to call Ed, but he was busy. But those kind of guys and girls, that's what they're doing now, and that's what they're coming up with these songs that are, Stapleton's latest release is almost a heavy rock song as well as country. Co-written with some rock guys, and that's what I think is so cool.
So as individual songwriters, were you both writers who would write through a lot of stuff that you didn't use to get to the good stuff? So Trent, you were talking about, when people co-write, they probably have 5 days in a room where nothing good comes out of it. So when you're individually doing that, did you each sort of separately try a few things and throw them out before you would present things to each other?
Not at the start, I don't think. We've got, once again, the naivety's bliss thing. Literally the first song I reckon I penned properly was Last First Kiss. That was literally the first song I ever wrote. And I was like, well, let's go to a studio. That's literally what happened. That'll do. Yeah. Now we kind of get that you gotta put quality forward. So that concept of what you're talking about is more of a thing now.
True.
You write 5 or 10 to get to 1. Yeah. But back then, that sounds good. There you go.
Those words rhymed.
And obviously Jock agreed, otherwise you wouldn't have gone to the studio with it.
No, that's true. But he was naive as well.
Yeah, we're both very naive, I think.
But by the time you started writing, you obviously had quite a lot of experience performing. You could probably start to trust your instincts as artists and know what was going to work lyrically, melodically, and for your voices.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's said for, I'm so glad we did the 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it was, before we did Route 33 in the pubs. And I feel I can watch acts, say at Tamworth or CMC, they're all slick, but you can go to a Tamworth or whatever, you can see the people who have cut their teeth in a pub or in that setting, and you can see the people that are studio produced performers. They don't look as comfortable on stage, and you learn to see, even if it covers the same concept, what's grabbing people, what's not grabbing people. And you tend to see, as a musician, stuff that we think's amazing, they don't. So we'll sit there and think a solo, for example, is amazing.
Yeah.
And you look at the crowd, they couldn't care. They just want to get back to the words they know.
Yeah,
so it's about catchy licks. It's about memorable words. It's about chord progressions that are going to sit in your head after they listen to them once. So that's probably the stuff we didn't know we were learning at the time, but we're picking it up by what songs do you sing at a cover gig to keep the crowd going is a concept we took into this, I suppose.
Songwriting, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right. So, Jock, I believe that Summer You was your inspiration originally.
Well, it was actually, that's the first one we did a little co-write on the chorus. It was an interesting one. I was sitting there with Perrin, our manager, and he's like, "Oh, guys, we're thinking sort of a summary sort of track
summer song
is what we needed." And I went, "Oh, righto." And then we sat down, and 2 seconds later, we came up with sort of that Summer You.
Well, you were still talking about something else. And then remember, I out of the blue about 10 minutes later, I said, "Summer You," like get it, like some of you, Summer You. It's like, huh? And then we said, stop the meeting, and Jock just went with his guitar into the back room. And Perrin said to my partner, he goes, "Oh, well, I'll just do that every time. I'll just give you a theme. We'll just do that every 3 months."
What we do struggle with is coming up with different ideas.
Yeah, it's hard. That's the hardest thing we feel, coming up with concept. Once you have it, once I gave him the idea of Summer You, took him 2 minutes to come up with that chorus. Yeah. And that's close to the chorus you hear today.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And then, took it from there. And obviously, then I just went and penned the verses, came back, and we tweaked it. It was actually an interesting one, that one, because the bridge we came up with with Copley up at the Matt Copley, our producer, he was up here touring with Delta at the time, and he was in a hotel. So we went up and sung the lyric vocals in a hotel room with some pillows and everything. It was a unique way of doing vocals. And we just penned the bridge while we're up there.
Which is new for us. Obviously, a lot of artists do it that way, but
obviously not having it pre-written, not anything, and just went, "Oh, there's a bridge. All right, let's pen something together and record it there and then." And that was the bridge that was there. Yeah.
It's the success of that process suggests to me that maybe as co-writers, you should be inspirations for each other. One of you should just lob out a word, the other one can write the song, and then
that's it, team effort.
Well, stranger things have happened. There was an artist I interviewed a little while ago, Felicity Dowd, who said that she was doing this exercise where she would pair words that didn't belong together and then write songs because of it. It was just like a little exercise, and that was an inspiration that worked. So she had a song called Honeycomb and Glue, because she just put those two words together. And I
don't think we're that good.
No, I don't think we're that good either. I think we're limited like Summer You. Yeah. See what you did there. Yeah.
You mentioned Matt Copley as your producer. How did you come to work with him?
We got introduced to him when we started with Route 33. And we had a guitarist who we were using at the time, and you come to learn there's a big gap between cover artists and probably the best session original artists in the country. And our guitarist at the time, it was pretty well known around Brisbane, done a lot of guitar teching for some of the biggest acts in the world type thing. He basically put his hand up, which is pretty noble, and said, "I'm not good enough for this. Use this guy." And he met Delta. He's now a fiance, but he met Delta by turning up as her touring guitarist. And he was with Conrad Sewell. So he was our guitarist for probably a year or two before he got serious with Delta and moved down to Sydney. And then he produced her last album, and that's how that all came about, because he wasn't a producer when he was up here.
Right.
And he works with Tom Garnett out of 301 studio in Sydney, obviously one of the better kind of sound engineers in the country. And those two have done a lot of, Conrad's albums and Delta's, and that's how we got on board. And we just love, once again, it's that left of centre thought, because he's not from the country world. So he'll put in licks or he'll put in concepts that probably don't fit in a box of country, but that's what we kind of like, I think. You don't know what you're going to come up with, but 9 times out of 10, it's better than what we wanted type thing.
Yeah, right. It certainly has an extremely infectious melody, but so many of your songs do. And so that's why it interests me even more that you've written separately over the course of the two albums, because that means that separately you have that ability to come up with those melodies. And as you mentioned, Trent, you learn a lot in a cover gig about how to entertain an audience. So I'm wondering if you have both followed your instincts when you write melodies, or if it's something that you've actually crafted over time.
I don't know. Yeah, it's sort of always, whether you're writing a poem or writing something, it's always something that just flows, and hook stuff with guitars. Like I always, like even before we started songwriting, I was always been the smart ass at the party, used to make up songs on the spot, taking the piss out of someone, and that kind of stuff is something that always just flowed naturally for both of us. We're actually pretty lucky in that sense. Writing songs and
stuff.
Don't
have to think too much about it.
Yeah, sort of just the hook or a line sort of comes out, but then it's the sticking to it and actually following through and finishing the songs is probably where we struggle with, because we get bored and go, no, that one sucks, throw it out, go on to the next one.
Now, the song has reached over 100,000 streams, so that must feel nice.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's like anything. You write something, and I was saying earlier about the humble pie being in the oven, like you still throw it out there thinking, oh, hopefully this one will go all right. And to actually see people gravitate towards it and grab it and start listening to it, it's obviously why we do what we do as well. Other than, obviously I enjoy writing, enjoy recording, enjoy playing, but actually seeing people take your songs and listen to it as much as they have, and considering this one's 100,000, it's pretty surreal. Yeah.
And Trent, how does Boston feel about this?
He doesn't like when we practice. So.
Did he explain Boston is your dog?
Yes, Boston's my French bulldog. No, he doesn't like when we practice. He starts howling at us. So he actually doesn't approve if that's what he's doing.
The music takes you away from him. So yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
Right. So I was hoping he might be the band mascot, but given that explanation, no, not at all.
No, that's it. We keep him away as much as we can. Lock him up at home.
Right. When you reach a milestone like that, does it make you feel more pressure for the next song? Like, oh, we better produce something that's going to do that well again? Or does it actually spur you on to produce something that great again?
I think music's changed the way people take it in over the years. So my take on it is, lack of a better term, you throw shit at a wall and hope it's going to stick a little bit, So yeah, well, what someone like Casey Barnes or James Johnson, probably the two that have grown the quickest in Australia over the last 5 years, you notice they're more active on their releases than anyone else. And that's what we've tried to be once we got on board properly with Parent. I think with 4 singles this year or something, 4 singles or something like that. And so it's just, okay, let's go through the process. So we don't actually have time to think for the next one. We've got the next one ready to go, and we're only talking about it before we came onto this Zoom. Okay, well, that's coming out. What are we doing? So it's almost a blessing in disguise that you're not resting on your laurels and waking up on the Friday morning or whatever it is of release and nervous as, because one happened 12 weeks ago and there's another one happening in 12 weeks time. That's the good thing about the high activity, and it shows that's how success seems to be bred. When you look at how James has done it and Casey's done it, it's a pretty obvious strategy.
Yeah, but it's also different to the way so many artists started, thinking of singles, moving towards EPs or albums. And there are still EPs and albums happening, but it is a really different way of thinking about getting your music out there. So are you still thinking albums? Are you working towards an album?
Yeah. We got 2 more singles to fully wrap up this 3rd album that we've pulled together.
12 or 13 track or something.
Yeah, that we put on there. And then obviously we've got a fair few tracks on there that haven't been released yet, been sitting on for a while, because it's been a long time between drinks for their album. So we're excited to get those tracks out as well that have been.
But once again, you look at the concept, Casey went and released an album after he released that amount of songs. It wasn't just 2 or 3 singles to an album. He releases every single song and it becomes an album, and it seems to be a method that works. So as obviously you got to be producing the quality songs, and that's up to Nadia and Perrin on whether they are quality enough as singles. But those two come up with, hey, if we can get 5, 6, 7 singles out of this album, then we will. That's kind of the strategy we're running on, I suppose.
Yeah, right. And of course, to support these releases, live performance is a great idea. As you mentioned, you two both have day jobs, and that can be hard to navigate when you're trying to tour. So is Tamworth a prospect for you? So we're heading, the time I'm talking to you, it's December. Looking ahead to Tamworth, will you be playing?
Probably not this year.
No, we won't be. I've got to go overseas for my sister's wedding. So, and last year Jock was having his firstborn. So we've missed Tamworth 2 years in a row. We did it the 3 years before that. So yeah, got a few things in the woodworks that aren't announced yet for next year festival wise. Obviously we can't say them because of contract, whatever. But yeah, no, we've got a few things coming up and hoping to do 2 or 3 singles on the album. So, but as Jock said before, it's all about the end result is to get on festivals and play this music live to people. That's where we get our biggest kicks.
Yeah. Well, if Jock, if you have a child, then obviously you can start training the next generation, or at least training a roadie.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit more useful than Boston. Yeah.
Well, now also at the time I'm talking to you, Jock has to go off and be a Santa Claus in the neighborhood, so I'm going to let you do that already. But it was great to talk to you. Obviously, there is new music coming soon, so people can listen out for that, and I'm sure it will be just as catchy as some of you. Thank you very much for talking to me, Trent and Jock, Route 33.
Thank you very much
for having us.
Cheers.